And welcome to this week's Mailbox, where there's a few different comments, but quite a lot of them are to do with the submodel in World of Warcraft, in particular in the wake of the dreadwake mount, and a couple of things about that as well. We've also got stuff on Azerite armour from Mythic Plus Dungeons, of course, as well as Ian Hazakostas as game director, and a couple of other little things at the end as well. So first of all, this one, as I said last week, we're going on for very much longer, but the Where's the Mailbox from last week was indeed the Crossroads in the Northern Barrens. Now, generally speaking, I say that you should state where it is and in which zone it is. There are a few people here didn't say which zone it is, but then to be fair, I think last week I forgot to say that bit. So the few people who sort of correctly identified this one, this week's is here, really easy. I am running out of difficult ones now, so I'm probably only going to do this for a few more weeks. But what you have to do is you have to say where specifically it is. I don't need coordinates or anything like that, but where specifically it is, which like locale, as well as which zone it is in as well. It's not just enough for one or the other. Right then, on to comments. So, your voice is sexy. Yes, I've been told that. I don't know how, but I've been told that. Yes, I agree. Let's have a look. So the dreadwake ones. Says, I couldn't agree with you more. 3 months is nothing. 6 is quite a lot. I have 6 months of game time in tokens, and even if you used it all now, you wouldn't get the mount, which I find really odd too. Although I'm going to come across to that in a moment. But yeah, I mean, the argument I was making about it is, you know, you're having to get 6 months in advance. Is it a strong enough draw to be able to do that? I don't know how many people it's going to be successful for. It might be a little tricky for Blizzard to tell, but they've got the best chance of being able to tell. But whatever it is, I would suggest they'd get more bang for their buck doing it over 3 months, because this is targeted, this promotion is targeted at the sort of people who are going to unsub until the next patch comes out. Well, the next patch could be in a few months anyway, so if they do it for 3 months, that could still take them to the next patch when they naturally want to sub anyway. And what I was saying is if they did it at 4 points in the year, so there was always, if you get, you know, so you could get 3 months sub at once and you'll get the dreadwake mount. Oh, I'll do that then. Then at the end of it, it's like, oh, you get another one, you get this other mount. And if it's the sort of people who are intended to come back to the game, I keep saying cosmetic rewards are really powerful. And if it's a unique mount, not one that's going to have a recolor, not be anything like that, but a unique mount, especially one that looks cool, then people may just see it as being worth it just for the mount alone. And while they're subscribing, they might as well pop on every now and then anyway. Just play it on a very casual basis. Whereas 6 months is much more of an investment. And for some people, could be more than they can afford. There are some people, of course, who may be subscribing more regularly anyway and not getting it because, well, 6 months at once is a lot. So, yeah, I don't understand why if Blizzard... I don't get, and this is what I'll do the video about, I don't get how they can be this dim, because it seems obvious to me. If it's going to work for 6 months, it would work at least as well, but I think way better, for 3 months. And surely it's not costing them excessive amounts of money to produce this mount, compared with what they're going to get out of it with the extra subs. Do it 4 times a year. Do it for 3 months. 3 months is something that people can aim towards. It's like, oh, 3 months, well, that's not actually that bad. Because World of Warcraft as a hobby, as hobbies goes, is really cheap. Any, you know, subscription-based MMO. For the amount of time you're going to get out of it, and I know the ones who are unsubbing all the time, of course, wouldn't be playing it at all. But for the amount of time you can get out of it, and even on a casual basis, like, I am now super casual. I play it basically twice a week. I played a bit yesterday for the Mythic Plus Dungeons. Some other time, well, in fact, on Wednesday, in terms of this reset, I did some World Quests. Did I? Or was I playing? No, I was playing Lord of the Rings Online, I think, then. Was I? I don't remember. But I basically play twice a week. One time I do some World Quests and another time I do some Mythic Plus Dungeons. That's basically what I'm doing. That's basically all I'm doing. But it's still a bargain price for that, compared to other hobbies I could and indeed do have. It's bargain for the price. So getting a mount thrown in as well. Very tempting, even if you're only going to be playing it a little bit. That's what I think anyway. Right, now, the here's was something. So, there was reported, and I did say to this person as well, it was reported and accepted that people were trying to get it with WoW tokens, and it wasn't working, and they were contacting GMs who were basically saying, yeah, it's not great, is it? It's not very nice, but nothing we can do about it, sorry, and you can't get your refund or anything like that. It's just the way it is. Then I gather that much more recently, as in the last couple of days, people have started to report that GMs, although it doesn't seem to work automatically, I'm not sure yet, someone let me know if they've done it super recently, that you get the dreadwake mount, but if you're contacting GMs, there's now reports that they are giving you the dreadwake mount, which suggests that what's happened is, it's been kicked upstairs, they've gone, oh yeah. Because actually, if you think about it, for what this is, they'd probably prefer people pay that game time with WoW subs. WoW tokens, sorry. WoW tokens give them twice as much money as a normal sub. Because although the person who got the token may not have paid real money for it, someone has. And they've paid double a monthly sub for each token. So, it seemed to me ridiculous to deny it for the WoW tokens. But that was the situation that it was going. But it may have changed now. There seems to be some reports that something has changed, even though it hasn't been communicated. But communication, we've already discussed that to death, haven't we? That's the next one. It's still also about subs. It says, I prefer the flexibility to sub when I like. The game doesn't hold my attention longer than a few months, and no mount will change that. A good game that will hold my interest will. Now, this is the thing, you see. So no mount change. So you would be lost to them anyway. That's fine. And you say a few months, well, they're probably quite happy with that. Because a few months later, there'd be another patch anyway. What was it? Typically about 5 months between them. What was it? They ran in, it was 11 weeks, it sort of seemed to run between half patches, wasn't it? So I suppose between major content patches, 22 weeks. About 5 months. So that would be okay. But the point is that this promotion was for those for which amount will change it. That's the whole point. And I think the argument from my point was amount on 6 months worth is not going to attract as many for two reasons. One, amount for 6 months is not proportionally as good a value as amount for every 3 months. And the other thing is that, as I say, there are some who just straight up can't afford it in one go like that. But yeah, so obviously Blizzard, they can't release content. I mean, the way the game is set up as well, they've talked a lot about wanting this procedurally generated content that just naturally creates lots of things. And they've tried it with Mythic Plus Dungeons. They've tried it with Islands and things like that. But ultimately, the way the game is doesn't really allow for that much. Whereas I think there are some, small number, and ESO is the old one I use as an example, has it set up such that you can get more enjoyment out of it for a longer period of time. But that's just the way the core game has been set up now, which has changed since it launched. But in World of Warcraft, it doesn't. That's the thing. They don't really give the world any way of doing it. All their procedurally generated content is in the form of instance content, like Mythic Plus Dungeons and like the Islands now. And they don't really do it to the whole world. And that may just require another game now. And then the last point says, and besides, I have a golden griffin, which is functionally the same, but less bulky. Well, indeed. Okay. If you're just after them out for functionality, then of course it's not going to be an appeal at all. Next one, then there was then the opposite view. It says, well, I just got a nice mount for free, basically because I already have the 6 month sub running for 2 months. So I personally see it as have a nice thing, long-term player. But that's not what it is either. They're not going to give you anything. You sub anyway, just like I do. I sub every month. I sub 3 times every month. Well, it's a 3 month sub that I have rolling, but still, I'm paying for 3 accounts worth. I get nothing for that. Zilch. The fact that you have is totally incidental. It's not been made for you. It's been made for those who don't, who drop off. So it's certainly not that. It's whenever you announce a promotion, giving something to someone without saying you were going to do it in the first place is only ever something a company will do for nice reasons. It's a bit like, wasn't it, during WODs at some point, they gave those statues to people who had been subbed every single month since the game launched, in whichever region you were in. And those people got... Now, that wasn't a promotion. You know, that was just Blizzard going... it was the 10th anniversary, wasn't it, or something? That was just Blizzard going, we want to do a nice thing. It costed it up. There was only so many people that were in that situation anyway and thought, yeah, we can do that. So that was just a nice thing that they did. This isn't a nice thing that they've done. It's a promotion specifically to generate extra income. The fact that some long-term players will get it and some won't is what I think is really weird. It's weird that I wouldn't get it even if my... You know, I've already... Because the only thing... And I will probably get it. I say probably. It's still got a few weeks, I think, to run. I haven't done it yet. But because from my point of view, the 3-month sub came up last month. So I paid my 3 lots of 3-month subs. So what I would have to do to get this is now, just a few weeks after I did that, for one of my accounts, because I don't need it for all of them, and I'm not going to do it for the American account as well, I don't play it enough, but for one of my European accounts, I will do the 6-month thing, which means that it'll also go out of sync, which is annoying to me, but never mind. I'm not that worried about that. But yeah, it's just the in advance thing. Now, in a year's time, it'll have all caught up and it'll all be fine again. But it's the fact that I'm having to pay effectively 9 months. That's what I'll have had to do for this. For me personally, I'll have had to pay 9 months in advance because I've already paid 3 months in advance and would have to get an additional 6 months in advance. And it's just that side of it just seems odd. What they should have just done is said, look, you know, you're going to get this mount if you are if you're subscribed every month for the next 6 months. And if you want to pay for 6 months in one go, then you'll get it straight away. If you're going to do it in 2 lots of 3 months, then the second 3-month payment will trigger it. And if you're going to do it every month, then the 6th monthly payment or WoW token, however you're doing it, will trigger it then. But if you stay subscribed for the next 6 months, which is all they want people to do, it will trigger them out. That would have just been the better thing to have done. So they've implemented something that's got that in mind, but at the same time, denying lots of people it just seems stupid. Anyway, someone then said, so I basically, this is all about subs at the moment, sorry, we'll go into other things. I basically just let my sub roll into the next 6 months, which got me the amount. I'm not a big fan of how this was implemented. I think Az was overreacting, but I like the model he brought up. So I haven't seen this video. But it says, accumulate playtime. It's their main reportable metric anyway. Play for 168 hours across all characters, say before Christmas, and boom, you got it. Or if they don't like that, there are a ton of ways to avoid AFK situations. Get a BFA plus 15, complete a plus 5 in every dungeon. Find Vol'jin Spirit or the Alliance equivalent quest line, things like that. Yeah, that could work. I mean, the thing is, World of Warcraft is the only game I know that doesn't do something like this. Like in other games, your effective loyalty bonus ramps up anyway, just naturally. The reason why I wouldn't base it on stuff you're doing in game for this particular promotion, I did talk about the fact that they should have more mounts as rewards for achievements that take a certain amount of time to complete, because that will naturally keep people subbed. Because then they're working for something. But Blizzard just have this block. They don't understand how powerful cosmetic rewards are. I don't understand why. But other games have it anyway, because other games that have a subscription model, they also have an online store for which there are points. And you get points with the subscription. So naturally, you're getting these rewards anyway. So if you want a particular amount, it costs so many points. If it would take 3 months worth of subscriptions to have enough points to get it, well, you know, that's what you'll do. You might not get it all in one go. You might do 2 months one, have a month or two's break, and then come back and do another month. Then you get your amount later anyway. But more people are potentially more likely to keep subbed because those rewards stack up. But World of Warcraft is the only game that doesn't do that. World of Warcraft is the only game that I know. I don't know about all the games, of course. Someone's going to say then Final Fantasy probably does the same thing. I don't know. But it's the only game I know of where you don't get some sort of loyalty bonus scheme for staying as a customer. Even supermarkets do it, don't they? All you have to do is give them all they want to do is track what goods you're buying so they can target you for promotions. And you get like vouchers for money off your grocery bill. Everyone does it. Everyone does loyalty bonus schemes, even banks, for goodness sake. And World of Warcraft is, never mind the only game, it's the only large company, Blizzard is the only large company I know of, that doesn't operate such a scheme at any level, which I just find baffling. And this is one of the things about Blizzard. It just occurs to me, and I don't know enough about the business side of it to be able to say this for certain, but just has always occurred to me to be a company that was obviously set up by games developers and games designers, and perfectly understandable. But at no point did anyone ever develop any business acumen. Because it's just madness. Absolute madness. Anyway. Right, let's get on to more WoW-y content. But this is still dreadwake. This was a weird comment, but it wasn't the only one. There were so many people saying something along these lines, which I thought was baffling. It says, how do you have this video and never mention it's a boat and doesn't water walk? I have it and I won't use it. It's too big and bulky. As your water strider all the way. And I'm thinking, there's several levels at which I don't understand this comment. So, it says, first of all, it says, how do you have this video and never mention it's a boat? The video wasn't about the boat or the mount at all. It was about the promotion. But anyway, do the boat. It's a boat and doesn't water walk. If I was going to do a video about the many ways that this mount should behave, my first thing that I would be saying would not be, how is this thing a boat and doesn't float? It would be, how is this a boat and it flies? How does it fly? All it's got is these rubbish chitty chitty bang bang wings at the side. That's not going to help it fly anywhere. How does it fly? Oh, magic, because it's a fantasy game. The fact that it doesn't float, it's a flying mount. Flying mounts don't float. There isn't any flying mount that floats in the game. Why would this be any different? It's not even the first flying boat we've got. We've had what in real terms might be, less dense than water mounts that fly. They don't float either. No one made a big fuss about them. It's a ghost boat. It's a flying ghost boat is what it is. You wouldn't expect it to float. It's magic. A wizard did it. So I thought this was weird. I mean, okay, but it's weird. Bottom line is, it's a flying mount. Would you have preferred it had it been a mount because it's a boat that does float on water, but that you can't use it on land and it won't fly because it's a boat? That's my attitude on that one. Anyway, next one, it says, so this was about the AMA one again. It says, for one brief moment, hope was restored when I thought he said the AMA has been done and it's cost us the game director. What did I say that sounded like that? And you're like, I'm like, yes, he finally got fired. No. But then I realised he said Ian has cost us the game director. Okay. Be careful what you wish for there. I'll be perfectly honest. I don't think he's doing a great job as game director. In that teams are not coordinated. And there was so much wasted time, development time, when they had little enough as it was to get... the priority system of getting things right just wasn't in place. They did not have their priorities right. And they didn't have enough time to be able to... Like, if you've got a certain list of jobs to do, and you've got plenty of time to do it, priorities are less important because you're going to get it all done anyway. But they didn't have enough time to do it. And they even say that. They keep saying things like, oh yeah, we've got this huge list, but you've got to understand it's a huge list and we can't get everything done at once. So they understand that they've got a list that's too long to do for the time they've got. So they should prioritise, and they don't do that. So there's an awful lot of things that I think, as the leader of the development process, he is ineffective at. But that being said, that doesn't mean to say that I think that if he went and was replaced, that he'd be replaced by someone better. I don't. I think there's a very high chance that he'd be replaced by someone worse. So it wouldn't solve the problem. Because after all, this has been a problem that World of Warcraft has had way... I mean, Ian Hazacostas replaced someone who was worse than him anyway. Ian Hazacostas been made game director, believe it or not, my opinion anyway, was an improvement on what we had before. Because we had someone who was not only useless, but totally disinterested in the game. And I'm not saying he was always useless. That's where I infer that he's disinterested in the game, Tom Chilton, because he wasn't always useless. I don't think he was always great, but he seemed to be much less interested in it. Whereas I don't get that impression from Ian Hazakostas. I think he's very interested in the game and the development of the game. I just don't think he's competent at managing the team. I think he was a very good encounter designer. I think he was a very good game designer, but not someone who's good at leading a large team of game designers. And if I felt that he was actually at least trying to improve on that, then I'd be less worried. I'm not convinced he is doing that, though. That's my worry. But I absolutely do not believe that getting someone else in would improve the situation. It could actually make it worse. Really could. You have to be careful what you wish for with things like this. It's the same thing with sports teams wanting their managers gone. And then it eventually happens, and they get someone else in, then they realise, actually, it's not all that great after all, because the person who's come in is getting even worse results. All right, next one. Now I'm going to do a separate video on this one, of course, because it is super important. It says, I hope they give Mythic Plus a more reliable way to acquire Azerite gear. They also add something for those who only raid. At least the Mythic Plus cache has bad luck protection, so you'll definitely be getting 985 pieces in the future. Those relying on raids will be rolling the same low drop chance every week and may well not get anything. It's not quite true, especially if you use your seals on them, for which, of course, there is bad luck protection. You will get things as a raider. You always do. But the Mythic Plus Azerite system is a big problem. It's not... The thing is, I hope that Blizzard see it as a big problem as well. The problem is, I'm not really seeing a lot of discussion on it. Usually when they're actively working on something, they tend to say something. Something comes out. It might just be a reply to a comment on the forum or something like that. But there's some indication that there's some serious thought going into it. Because that's what they like to do. If they think a solution is imminent, they like to shout it from the ramparts to show that they're doing a thing. Where they either don't know how to fix a problem or they don't accept that it is a problem, they tend to be much quieter on it, so as not to just stoke up a hornet's nest. The fact that they're being quite quiet about this is a worry to me, because I got lucky. I mean, first of all, I'm casual. Does it matter that much? But the thing is, but I still look at this, casual or not, my gear is exclusively coming from Mythic Plus Dungeons. That's all the content I'm doing. There was a time when I thought, well, maybe I could do raids as well, but I'm not going to spend the amount of time it takes to get into a pug, and there's nothing going on anywhere else in terms of set groups each week, so I'm not going to do it. So I'm doing Mythic Plus Dungeons. That's it. So my only chance of getting Azerite gear is from the Mythic Plus cache. Now, I got a piece this week. Very nice. Previous 2 weeks I didn't. But there are some people who, even after 3 weeks, have still not got any at all. And that's not really acceptable, because that means if they're doing exclusively Mythic Plus content, then their Azerite gear is like 340 pieces, potentially. They might be really good and doing plus 10s each week and higher maybe. And the rest of their gear might be pretty good. But their chest, head and shoulder slot is going to be dragging their item level down. And of course, even if you are like, I got one piece, actually, ironically, it's a nice trait if I was a raider. For a Mythic Plus dungeon, it's not that great. The choice of, well, because you had 2 traits on the outer ring. Neither of them are all that great for Mythic Plus dungeons. I went with one particular one. It's poor. It is poor. And I'm going to do a video on what I think are the only things I can do about it. But then, to be fair, the conclusion I'll basically draw is it's not obvious what to do about it, because lots of people have gone, oh, we'll just do this or just do that. But there are downsides to that as well. So I can well understand that it might be that Blizzard are aware it's a problem, but as they too often do, instead of just doing something to make it better and then reviewing it and changing it again for the next patch, they're just frozen like a rabbit in the headlights doing nothing at all, because all they see are the downsides to any other solution, without recognising that those downsides might still be smaller downsides than what we have with the status quo. But that's ultimately what some people do. If they see problems in solutions, they don't apply anything, even if the current situation is worse than any of the downsides that come with any change you can make, which is ridiculous. Not that I'm in favour of change for the change's sake. I'm not in favour of, oh, a situation now is bad, we must do something. Oh, here's a thing, let's do it. Because you have to be aware of, is this thing going to improve it or make it? It doesn't have to be perfect. A solution doesn't have to perfect something. It just has to make it better. All people need of you. Make it better. Then leave it for a bit. Don't chop and change it every week. Leave it for a bit. Leave it for the next patch. and then change it again as necessary, and just keep refining it like that. They did that successfully with some things in Legion, and then other things they just left alone. It was just mad. Next one. So on the threat to dungeon. So it says here, so we're talking about this in the Azeroth review. It says, threat is also a DPS responsibility, at least in 5 months. DPS is not realising that, to me, is the biggest source of frustration regarding this issue. I have experienced threat issues, example in situations where the mobs in a pack is too far spread apart to be cleaved with my range cleave, keg, smash, brewmaster, when DPSs are not considering which mob I'm targeting or pulling first. So I'll leave it at that point there. What I will say is, on the one hand, yes, it is a DPS responsibility. For example, this was happening last night. Occasionally, I was pulling aggro because I was, especially with wings up, focusing a mob that the tank wasn't focusing. But in that situation, it's just a simple case of saying to the tank, I've got aggro on this particular thing. And I might switch to something else. But you've got to understand what you think as the tank is the mob that should be focused may not be what the DPS thinks. And there needs to be some communication. So the tank doesn't get to complain about that situation unless they'd made it clear which one they'd be focusing most of their threat on. Now, if they'd done that and the DPS is just doing their own thing, then yes, that's the DPS's fault. But if it's not clear, the DPS has made a decision based on the thing that they think they should die first. And it was particularly important for me as well because it's raging this week. And I was with a group where there were several mobs and I was focusing one down at a time to make sure we didn't get all of them raging. They were all going down at an even rate, even when I wasn't AoE, which everyone else was AoE whoring. And multiple times, indeed, the tank did die because we just had a load of mobs raging. So in a situation like that, I'm not going to ease up on my threat on the mob that I think is going to die first. I'm going to go for it to try and get it killed ASAP. But but it is a two-way thing. This was always the problem back when threat genuinely mattered. It doesn't matter anymore. People keep saying, oh, it matters now like TBC. Does it, hell? You wait till Classic WoW comes out and you try tank, and you just bloody well wait. But anyway, especially if you try and do it as not a warrior, I should advise against it. But yeah, it's back in vanilla TBC. You'd often get the thing where if someone pulled aggro, the tank would immediately go, "Oh, it's DPS's fault." When sometimes it was and sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes the tank was just not generating enough threat. And it was the same thing with healing. If they died as well, if they died, it was always I didn't get any heals for like 12 seconds. Which one tank tried to do that with me once, and I showed them that they were getting spammed here with my biggest heals. It was them being dumb for being hit in the back. But nonetheless, tanks always used to have that attitude. It was always someone else's fault. Because the problem with tanking is there's only two things you have to do. One is stay alive. Two is generate threat. I suppose three, stand in the right place. But whenever anything goes wrong, when it's down to any of those little areas, it could also conceivably be someone else's fault. So from a tank's point of view, it's always the other person's fault. They don't really get to get away with that as much these days. It's very different tanking now. But yeah, so it is the DPS responsibility to a certain extent, but only to the extent that the tank has said, this is the one we're focusing. If they've said that, and the DPS focuses another one, then, okay, the DPS are responsible. Otherwise, it's the tank's responsibility. Because there is no issue. Like I've said before, in the 5-man, we're doing very casual, very slow. Our tank is tanking it, but he's really a DPS. He played DPS last expansion, previous, and so on. But he's playing tank because within our little social crew, he's the one who's prepared to tank, and that's why he's tanking. So he's not an experienced tank, is what I'm trying to say, and we've not had an issue with that. Every now and then, someone will pull aggro on something, and it'll just say, and he'll get it back, and that's it. It's done with. And it's not common for that to happen even. And it never happens at all if we all agree which one to focus. It's just that we don't always do that. So there has been zero issues with someone who, although is an intelligent player and has done their homework on how to tank, is not a very experienced tank. So it doesn't take that much. Anyway, next one on the PvP one. This is a weird comment. So basically, someone said, Thete, just give 3v3 a chance, because I'm talking again about the fact that, just to précis this, I don't like small scale PvP. The concept of it is dull. I like large scale PvP, which doesn't exist in WoW. You know, so siege, you know, so you can have any number of things you'll be taking part in, and you could be directly besieging a large fortification. You could be with a smaller group besieging a smaller objective. You could be on your own providing information on troop movement, for want of a better word, but the enemy, where they're going to. If they've left a fortification to go somewhere else, you can give information on that. With a really small group, you could be waylaying reinforcements and stuff like that. So there's all sorts of direct assaults, minor assaults, scouting operations, you know, seek and destroy operations. There's lots of different roles, and there can be multiple raids all working in a proper world PvP scenario, which just doesn't exist in WoW. So, anyway, this person said, just give 3v3 a chance. Small-scale PvP has always been superior to any kind of siege or large-scale. Better balance and not a Zerg rush. Well, I've already just said, large-scale PvP isn't a Zerg rush in a game where it's done well. It is in World of Warcraft, because there's actually no such thing as large-scale PvP in World of Warcraft. When you have a large number of people, people might call that large-scale PvP. But in actual fact, it's not. It's small-scale PvP with more players. That's not what makes it large-scale. Well, it can in some people's books, I suppose. So if you're considering that to be a Zerg rush, you haven't played a game where it's done well. And you need to. And it's possibly there's just very few games that do it well. But in terms of it being superior, is entirely your choice. But what I was saying is that actually it's not. Because 3v3, 2v2, whatever it is, arenas is always the same. It's inconvenience the healers, kill people in order from weakest to strongest. That's it. How you do it, of course, is variable. And I'm not saying it's low skill. People always have this attitude that if something isn't complex, it means it's not a very skilled game. Of course, there's plenty of simple games that require a high degree of skill to distinguish better players from worse players. Skill has nothing to do with the complexity of a game. Interest, for me, has something to do with the complexity of a game. So there's plenty of skill on show in it, but it's just not interesting either to do or to watch. Because it's all the same. You are inconveniencing a healer, killing from weakest to strongest. That's it. Those are the two tactics. Or the two strategy, I should say. The tactics can vary depending on class composition and stuff like that. So what I said is I have played 3v3 at various points since TBC. It could be argued that its trial period has come to an end, given that I've been playing it for 10 years, yes. It's not even the sort of PvP I enjoy in the game. To which I had a further response, which I didn't actually reply to, but I'll respond to now, just because I didn't really know where to go with it without fearing being rude. It says, TBC is almost 11 years old now. The way classes work and the gameplay is completely different. Oh, I'd not noticed that. Having played every expansion since, I'd not noticed that. But I will have to draw their attention to the fact that I said, I have played some 3v3 at various points since TBC. Since means up to the present day. So it means I played Arena in Legion. I've played it in WoD. I've played it in MoP. I played it exactly once in each of those, I believe, because it's boring. It's dull. It's a bit like me saying I don't like sprouts, which I don't, by the way. And someone says, oh, you'll like it like this. There it is, mixed in with mashed potato. And I eat that and say, no, I don't like it because I don't like sprouts. Oh, okay. Here you are. Here's it with some beef stew. And I try it and I go, no, I don't like this because I don't like sprouts. Oh, I know. I'll put it in some cheesecake. You like cheesecake? And I eat that and I go, well done, I now don't like cheesecake. Because you put sprouts in it. And it's the same thing there. I don't like small-scale PvP. It's boring to me. It's dull. So it doesn't matter what they do to Arena, and they haven't done anything, by the way, that makes it significantly different in concept. It is inconvenience a healer, kill from weakest to strongest. That's the way it was in TBC, and that is the way it is now. And it makes no difference. You know, every time I heal or use a defensive, there could be a troop of Pikachus coming out dancing around the arena. It wouldn't make it any more enjoyable. Because I don't like small-scale PvP. I don't like Pikachus either, but I certainly don't like small-scale PvP. That's all there is to it. Anyway. And then there's a little comment that says, imagine if BFA was good. Enjoy WoD 2.0 and Legion 0.5. This is a bit disappointing. I think comparing it to WoD is harsh, even though I enjoyed the WoD experience. The WoD as an expansion was very bad. Here's what I think about it. Try and imagine if BFA and Legion were the other way around. if BFA and Legion were the other way around in terms of the game concepts and the quality of the game as it was and stuff like that, I think people would feel that BFA is a big improvement on WoD. And then when BFA is done with, which it would have by now, and Legion has come out, people would probably feel that Legion was a step up from BFA as well. So then people would say, oh, the game's getting better. I think the problem has been that Legion has followed WoD and then BFA's come after it. And it's not necessarily inevitable. They had no choice about this. I think it's simply that you've got to remember Legion nicked a load of development resources from WoD. BFA had what was the anticipated amount of resources given to it, which arguably wasn't enough. Certainly Ian Hazacostas argues it's not enough. But whether it is or not is another matter, because it's always one of these things, when people complain that they haven't been given the resources to do a good job, what they're really saying to the managers is, you need to give us more resources, you need to loosen the purse strings. And then the manager's response to that is always, you need to work more efficiently. And the problem with those two arguments is either or even both of them at the same time can be true. And we from the outside don't really know which it is. I believe that Ian Hazacostas could be using his resources more efficiently. But then it's also debate, you could certainly also argue that they make so much money from World of Warcraft that even doubling the budget for the games would barely make a dent in profits, and is something that they could, because they only spend like a few % of their profits on it. And then he wouldn't have that argument either. So both could potentially be true. But yeah, I do feel that people are being overly harsh compared to Legion. It's a natural thing to do. I'm not saying it's an unreasonable thing to do. But BFA was simply not given the resources that Legion was. Because Legion had the resources of... Well, first of all, it was developed in parallel with WoD. So they started on Legion at the same time they started on WoD. Whereas BFA they started on when Legion finished. As in when they finished the main cycle. When Legion started in terms of when it went live, but when the main development phase finished. So in terms of time, in terms of people on it and stuff like that, it hasn't had as much as Legion. Legion has had the most on it, resources used on it, of any expansion before or since, in all likelihood. So it is a little bit unfair. That being said, there are things about BFA that are unacceptable. But I think it's harsh to describe it as being like WoD, because the main source of criticism with WoD was not that WoD itself was bad. Well, it depends who you ask. I think most people's complaints were that when WoD released, we didn't really get anything new after that. Obviously, you got new raids, but that was it. You didn't even get new dungeons. We had slightly harder versions of those dungeons in the form of Mythic dungeons, not Mythic Plus, but Mythic dungeons. But actually, by the time Mythic dungeons came out, with the gear that even casual players would have, Mythic dungeons were no harder than Heroic dungeons were at the start of the game, just because of gear. So I think it's harsh. I do think it's harsh to compare it to WoD, because I think it's better than WoD. And I think if it had come out after WoD, people would have been delighted with it, even though they'd have still criticised a few things. And to the next one. So let's talk about comparing subscription models to buy-to-play in this case, but free-to-play is some similar sort of thing. It says, although ESO is technically buy-to-play, they do give far better incentives to subscribe compared to WoW, just giving you access to the game and no cosmetic benefits. And this is true. However, what I would say with a buy-to-play or free-to-play game, it's the similar sort of thing, is it's easier to see a subscription as having more bonuses to it. Simply because if you are playing the non-subscription... See, with WoW, there is no non-subscription version, other than, I suppose, playing the game enough to be able to raise the goal to buy the WoW token, which has probably never been easier at the moment, because the WoW token is still stubbornly low in value, relatively speaking, compared with what you can make by being a miner and a herber and just selling all your stuff. Because at the moment it's about, on EU anyway, it's even less. It's always less in North America, but I haven't looked at what it is. But in EU, I checked it yesterday, and it's like 175,000 gold. Which, if you play it a lot, I mean, if you play casually like me, of course you're not going to raise that. But if you play it a lot, you don't even have to play the auction house particularly well. You just have to be a supplier, go out and farm a load of stuff, and you can make that. So that's the only sort of way to do free to play. Well, it'd be still buy to play because you still have to buy the expansion. So that's the only way to do it. But most people, of course, are paying the money for the subscription. So there's nothing to compare it to in the game, is what I'm saying. Whereas in ESO there is, and the way they get you to try and spend more is to inconvenience you. So they will ram your bags full of crap in games like this. And it works in all these sorts of games. Because that's a classic thing. It's like, oh, get the subscription and we'll tidy it up for you. I mean, in most games, that's like, you can have some extra bag slots and stuff like that. In ESO, they're actually quite good. They've got an awesome feature, which is the craft bag. Any crafting reagents, of which there are bloody hundreds of types of crafting reagents. But all those things go into it's a bottomless crafting bag. So it doesn't go into your normal inventory, it just goes into there, and it's an endless inventory source, which can be shared across all the characters on your account as well. And it just goes into there. So whenever you pick crafting things, you don't have to worry about where they are or anything like that. It just goes into your crafting bag, which is limitless. Which is an awesome feature. Truly awesome. But the reason why it is so awesome, I mean, something like that would be awesome in WoW as well. But the reason why it's particularly awesome in ESO is because the counter to that is if you don't have a subscription model, there are so many things that you will pick up that's just, well, it's crap, but it's not crap. It's not stuff you want to vend. It can be useful, particularly cooking reagents, which are not easy to come by. They're not easy to farm. So, yeah. And the same thing with a lot of other things as well. The game is deliberately designed to inconvenience you if you play the free-to-play or buy-to-play model, but it dangles the carrot of you can either spend money and get stuff off the store, or what is usually very good value, just pay for the subscription. And we will remove an awful lot of these inconveniences. Whereas WoW doesn't have that mindset because there's no point in inconveniencing people because they only, from their point of view, have one model, which is the subscription model. How you get that subscription is up to you, but that's the model they have. So, you know, it can be a little bit unfair. That being said, I do think they maybe should think about much more, not inconveniencing people, good God, but giving some rewards for the subscription, because then they might encourage people to play a bit more often if they're getting something with it. Next one. It says, on the topic of a science channel, because I've said this before, at some point I would like... The problem is, when I do a science channel, I keep saying, first of all, I don't know what the focus of it should be. And the other thing is, I want to have enough time to do it, which I don't at the moment. I want to do a good job of it. If I do that, I want to do a good job of it right from the start. It says, you would be a good person to do a physics of video game series. Really love that Argus video. The thing is, I don't think I would in terms of regular content, because, first of all, I don't play a lot of games. I've always had this attitude of, I play one or two games and I try to learn how to play them well, rather than playing a new game every few weeks. So I won't get to see an awful lot of them. In fact, I had this one, because as some of you may know, I've been getting into Warhammer again, which I was many years ago. And I was at the club on Friday because there was no Mythic Plus dungeons going to go. We did them yesterday in the end. And someone was trying to explain, oh, we should play this, and because there's a lot of people there who are very much like, you know, like a lot of gamers are, online gamers. They like to play lots of different games, and they keep saying to me, oh, you should play this, you should play that. It's like, no, I just want to play one game, or one or two games. And the same thing with the club. You get tabletop gamers that have that same mindset. We should play lots, and they'll play a different game every week type thing, or cycle around, several of them. And I keep saying, no. What I want to do is play one game and learn how to play it well, and go to tournaments, stuff like that, do it competitively. That's what I want. You know, so I want to focus on one game. So, yeah, it makes it difficult, therefore, to do that. And then the other thing to note is, even the games I do play are fantasy-type games. They're not games where you know, if you see something that's not terribly realistic, the bottom line is, a wizard did it. It's simply, it just keeps going back to that meme. That's how it works. A wizard did it. So, and it goes back to what I was saying about the dreadwake mount. You can't really complain about anything in World of Warcraft or any sort of games, high fantasy games like this. You cannot really complain from a basis of, it's not terribly realistic, because the whole world is not terribly realistic. The universe in which it's based is not realistic. It's not supposed to be. So it makes it difficult. The Argus one was, yeah, that was interesting. I liked doing that. But then, of course, a few days later, someone spotted something which made a complete mocker of the whole thing anyway. Because, you know what, a wizard did it. A wizard literally did it. Right, on to the next one. It was the last one, really. It's not really a dictionary corner as such, but it's a literacy-based one. I always like these, the pronunciation ones. And we've had a few of these before. This is a slightly different one, actually. But because throughout the UK, we pronounce things in lots of different ways. If you look at a British dictionary, the Oxford English Dictionary, which in America you have like Webster's is the main one. In this country we have the Oxford English Dictionary. It's not the only one, but it is the standard. And you will notice there are quite a lot of words as multiple pronunciations because we pronounce things or even use slightly different languages almost in different parts of the UK. And so things are very different. In America, it's much more similar, but there are some differences, which I'm going to point out. But I had this one. This was actually from Lord of the Rings video, actually. So if you pronounce Yorkshire as, that seems to be what they think phonetically is Yorkshire, but that's fine. It says, how do you pronounce the Shire from Lord of the Rings? Is it Shire? No, it's Shire. The implication being, I think, because there's some people in English-speaking countries that think, well, if you pronounce it Shire there, you should pronounce it Shire in the other word as well. So, no. And actually, this is one where even with Americans, you can convince them to do something different. Because sometimes it is often the case, not always, but often the case that, yes, I understand in America that if a particular word is pronounced in a particular way, that if that word is part of a longer word, it'll still be pronounced in that same way. Because they do, for example, I think they do, or you do, depending on whether you're American or not, say Yorkshire. And what. This is why I always say it's one of my guilty pleasures, listening to American cooking programs where they use Worcestershire sauce and trying to pronounce it, because they trip up on, because it's an unreasonable word, to be fair, and you get tripped up on it. There's a lot of words where certain sections of words in English, in English, are just softened. And trying to say Worcestershire and stuff like that. Because technically, if you try and read the word for the first time, Worcestershire, you do trip up on it, but Worcestershire, Gloucestershire, Hampshire, blah blah blah, all the way through. But we say Shire. If we're just talking about a shire, we say Shire. But so what I said was, this is quite a good one to think. So if Americans think, they think, well, wouldn't it just be easier to pronounce it the same everywhere else? Well, maybe yes, maybe no. It doesn't really matter, does it? It's just a word you grow up with, and everyone knows what it means. But it's not exclusively the case in America. For example, the word, how we would pronounce mobile, as in mobile phone. Now, I know that in America that tends to be pronounced mobile. It's fine, that's okay. But then what I always say is, okay, so how do you pronounce Batmobile? Because we say mobile, but Batmobile. But Americans say mobile, but they still say Batmobile. Because really, Batmobile is an American word. But even if you say automobile, because I'm not sure where that... Actually, it might be an American word as well. I'm not sure where that came first. It's very difficult. I don't know. But however you want to do it, in both Britain and America, the mobile or mobile part of Batmobile is pronounced differently to the word on its own. So every country has these. But I am always interested in these sort of things, these little pronunciation type things. Some of them are just obnoxious. I don't like that, but that was quite a funny one. I like that. So anyway, and that's the mailbox for this week. I've got to now get on and do another 5 videos today, if I can. I've got such a list. It's unbelievable. But one video that hopefully has come out before this one is a subscriber report. So if you are a regular follower of the channel, can you please watch that? Because there's some things I need to explain in that one in terms of a few changes. And thanks very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with other people who might also be interested. And until next time, I'll see you later.